Hi, I'm Candice Brown, and to celebrate the release of Julia Season 2 on Now, I am going to show you how to make a very, very special dish. So a loup en croute is a sea bass wrapped in pastry. It's filled with a mousseline. Now the version that Julia does and the version we saw at the Cordon Bleu is a sea bass, a whole sea bass, a massive sea bass, filled with this mousseline made of perch or pike and scallops. However, things can be quite expensive and quite difficult to get hold of. So the version I'm going to make, I'm using a salmon fillet and I'm using some prawns. It's flavoured with tarragon, it's creamy with butter, and it's just delicious. This fills the middle of the bass, and then we wrap it in pastry. So the first thing I'm going to show you is how to make my mousseline. Okay, so here I have weighed out a piece of salmon. Now this version probably will feed 2 very hungry people, 4 maybe as a main. I mean, if you're starving, just 1 portion. I mean, why not? So I've got raw salmon fillet, which I've taken the skin off, and I've got some raw prawns. And all I'm going to do first of all is I'm just going to cut this into chunks, really, really roughly, because we're going to blend it. So I'm just roughly chopping these. Use raw prawns if you can. I have simply defrosted some frozen, okay? And then I'm just going to pop these into a blender. Just going to blend that slightly. Excuse the noise. Just until it's roughly blended, okay? Because then we're going to add in all our other little bits. I've got some softened butter here, so that goes straight in. A good grind of salt and pepper, of course. We go back in with another little blend. So you can see already it's changing consistency, it's changing colour. And then, because I'm so organised and so ready for this, I've got 2 egg yolks, so really, really rich. You just want the egg yolks. And then I've got some heavy or double cream, okay? Then that goes in as well. And then we do our final little blend. So you've got the cream, you've got butter, you've got our salmon, our prawns, salt and pepper, and then I mentioned that really lovely flavouring of tarragon. Now tarragon features quite heavily in this. If you can't get tarragon, or you're not a fan of it, then leave it out, change it for something else, and that's the beauty of these recipes. So that is the base, okay, of our mousseline. And all we're going to do now, we're going to take some tarragon, and you want to take the leaves off. We don't want the stalks because the stalks can be a little bit tough. If you can't get fresh tarragon, just use dried, absolutely fine. You want about a small bunch. I would say once it's chopped, kind of works out to be about a tablespoon worth. Okay, let's get rid of our stalks. And then you want to roughly chop our tarragon, and you just give it a good mix, and you see that beautiful kind of green studded mousseline there. And it just goes into the fridge just to set, because what we're going to do is this is going to form the middle of our bass, and we're going to pipe it in into the fridge. So the next step of our loup en croute is to make the en croute. It's your interpretation of a fish. If you haven't got time or you can't be bothered, do you know what? Make it into a square. There are fish of all shapes and sizes, just like us. Do whatever you please. The loup en croute calls for sea bass. I thought it was a really good idea to show you how you can use a fillet, because you can get them at your fishmongers, you can get them at your supermarkets, and you can get some really great sustainable fish. I'm using sea bass as that's what the recipe calls for. However, I have used haddock. You could use cod if it's in season, pollock, anything like that. You could probably even use salmon, but then it'd be a salmon en croute and not a loup en croute. I don't know how Julia would feel about that. So as you can see, I've got 2 beautiful fillets here. I'm just running my finger along here to check there are no bones, and we're going to pop our mousseline in there. So I'm just going to grab that out of the fridge, and it's ever so slightly more set, which is great. Okay, into that I'm going to add in some chopped almonds. Now these are just blanched chopped almonds. You could use flaked almonds. I'm going to add these in, and we're just going to fold that through. And you can see it just folds in beautifully. It's thickened slightly, but we're going to add this mousseline to a piping bag. So it needs to be a pipeable consistency. My piping bag. Never ever do that after you've cut the hole out the bottom of the bag. And I say that from experience. You don't need to worry about a tip or anything like that for your piping bag. You don't even need to use a piping bag. You could literally spoon it on. I just find it works quite evenly to get it out quite nicely. So we're going to pipe it along kind of the center. Obviously just be aware that we're not going right to the edge because we want to try and encase it slightly as well. Okay, so we're going to literally encase this over, okay? Look, it's pretty much a whole fish now. Ta-da! But you've not got to worry because I know people are a bit weird about fish heads and the eyeballs, tails a bit weird and bones. But again, if you want to go full tradition, please do so. So we're just encasing that in. You can see you've got that little bit of mousseline just poking out there, all right? And we just want to make sure that it's fully involved in all of that. So you're going to get all of that delicious flavour in every single bite. We could make our own puff pastry, however, so long. Shop bought, easy peasy. So all I'm going to do is unroll this, bring it to room temperature so it's easier to work with. And I'm just going to lift my little fish onto the middle of our puff pastry. Now you want to make sure you've got some at the front because we're going to shape our fish, and we've got some at the end for our tail. Now we need to encase it. I'm going to trim that down, and then because we're going to encase it here before cutting out our fish shape, I need to egg. So I need a bit of egg wash around that edge so the pastry sticks, so we get no gaps and no seepage before we cover over. Then all you want to do is using the soft part of your hand. What you don't want to do is you don't want to create any holes, but you want to get rid of as much air as possible so it's all encased in that pastry. Little tip for you is just outline your fish before you start cutting, so then you know you're really, really happy with it. Once that's all pushed in, okay, around the edges, it's nice and smooth. From where the edge of the fish is, you want to go about maybe ½ an inch, 1 centimetre just above. So I'm just very, very lightly, we're going to go 1 centimetre or ½ an inch around the edge, and I'm just outlining my fish. So if you can see there, I've kind of got my outline. I'm pretty happy with that actually. So I'm going in. Just follow your line, nice sharp knife. Taking any other bits that you kind of miss, you can neaten up at the end. Down to our fin. Lift this bit away, she says. Oh, yes. So we're gonna give ourselves a nice fancy little tail. And we've got our little fish shape there. So we do want to add some little bits of detail. Again, if you don't have time or you don't want to, then don't worry. But I'm going to show you how you can make it look really pretty. First of all, I'm going to do little strip here, which is going to separate our head from our body. I then want a little strip which separates our body from our tail, and that's just using the cut-offs, okay, that we used, or that we cut off from our outline. I'm going to use the end of a piping nozzle for my eye, and then I also need to cut out a little fin. A little fin. So we kind of want to go round. And again, it's very much interpretation. I'm going to continue decorating my little fish now, but I'm going to transfer it over to the tray that's going in the oven. There we go. Oh, fine. The egg was on there and it was egg washed, so it sticks together. But what we want to do is make sure that there is no opportunity for it to come apart or spread or anything like that. So for my decoration, to get things to stick, we're going to go probably where the first fin is, a little line along there of egg wash. And then we're going to take our first piece of pastry and we're going to twist and we're going to lay that on that egg wash. When you're sticking things like an eye or a fin or anything like that, give a little score, okay? We don't want to go too deep. It's a score in both sides. You're almost creating like a little bond, a little bit of egg wash to stick, and then we pop the eye on. Our little tail section, okay? Again, you want to twist, 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 twist. So you just want to add on our little twirl here. Back of a knife, so for our fins, all you want to do is just push gently at an angle, indenting that so it looks like a little fin. And then we're going to do the same for our tail. Now you could use the end of a blunt knife, bottom of a knife, a fork, anything really. However, in my random stuff, I found this. You can tell how much I've used it because I don't really do a lot of decorating. But it is actually perfect for crimping and pushing the edges off my fish. And all I'm going to do is where I said you leave that ½ inch, that centimetre of space of pastry, I'm going to push this in and just look at that little pattern. You're sealing that pastry, but also creating a very, very beautiful pattern in the same time. And it's really important you don't get a bit overzealous and puncture your fish. 1, the fish is going to be livid. 2, you're going to make a hole in the pastry. I'm going to cut a little mouth out. Joe, I'm really happy with this. Scales. If you've got a little nozzle, all you do is you literally turn and lift ever so slightly. Now just look at that. Look like the perfect little scales. Just look at that. He's lovely. Oh, important, single black olive for the eye. We're just going to cut it in half. We've got the bit with the hole in, and we're going to poke that. I mean, it looks more fish than a real fish does right now. And then we're going to egg wash. And I've added a little bit of salt to my egg wash, and that helps give it a really, really beautiful golden colour. Oven on, 190, fan, egg wash it, and then it can go in. And finally, our fin. So we're going to score wherever you want the fin to go, really. Put that there just to finish off. And that goes into the oven. Oh, I'm pretty impressed with that. I think the cordon bleu would be very impressed. I think I'd pass with flying colours. It's going to go into the oven, 190. I'm going to check after 20 minutes, but I reckon about 25 to 30 minutes. For the last part of our Loup en Croute dish is the Choron sauce, or the sauce Choron. So this is a reduction of tomatoes and onion and thyme, cooked off, and then added to a reduction of white wine vinegar, more tarragon, some shallots, peppercorns, chervil, fresh chervil, if you can get it. However, I was unable to, so I'm using dried, and that is okay. And then I'm gonna add a little bit of stock into there as well. I'm then gonna add that to my tomatoes. I'm gonna add a little bit of double cream. So I'm gonna make a beautiful creamy tomato sauce. So again, it's my version of a sauce Choron, and this is how I'm going to do it. First of all, I'm going to take a couple of tomatoes. I'm just going to cut. We want to get rid of our seeds. Okay. Really roughly, but quite finely. Just going to chop these tomatoes. Okay. Along with that, I've got about half a small white onion, which I'm going to finely chop, and I'm going to sweat that off in a little bit of olive oil and a little bit of butter. Try not to use too much olive oil because we are just adding cream, okay, and we don't want our sauce to split, okay? So I would suggest not using too much olive oil. Completely unnecessary for me to say this, but it's a little bit like frog spawn, isn't it? The middle of a tomato. Just in case this wasn't delicious enough for you. Yummy. Really simple ingredients. It's not a huge amount to it, but so much flavour comes through, and I think that's where kind of French cooking is so great and so beautiful, just using really, really beautiful ingredients, simple ingredients, just with so much flavour. And I think kind of Julia really honed on that, and I think it's what's so beautiful when you watch the series. I mean, she is an icon, was an icon. So the series is just beautiful. The first series was stunning, but set in Paris and set in France, I mean, just dreamy, just dreamy. So I finally chopped my onion. I'm gonna pop on some heat, a little bit of olive oil in there, and then a little bit of butter. The oil will stop butter from burning. First of all, I'm just gonna add in my onions. And we want to sweat them down. When we say sweat them down, what a weird word to use, because it's not something you really want to, I don't know, associate with delicious food, is it? Sweat. But it's just softening them right down without kind of colouring them off too much. Just moved across because that was way too hot. And the panic was a little bit real then of me colouring the onions like I'd said not to do. So just turned it right down. So we just want them to go translucent and beautiful and lovely. I've got some thyme here. The stalks can be really, really woody and you don't want to be eating these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these in whole. Some of the leaves might fall off, some of them won't. And then I'm going to remove them before serving. And what you'll get is that beautiful fragrance of the thyme and no wood in your mouth, because nobody wants that. Okay, we've then got some white pepper, which I found quite strange because it's one of the things you don't really use very much now. And growing up in London, you would have pie mash and liquor and white pepper and vinegar and white pepper, or we'd have cockles with vinegar and white pepper, but now you don't get it very much. However, this calls for white pepper, and that's really, really important. The reduction uses black peppercorns, but our tomato concasse uses white pepper. I then have some tomato puree, so that really concentrated tomato, and then we have salt for seasoning. So they're sweating down nicely. I'm now going to add in my thyme, and I'm also going to add in my tomatoes. Already smells so good, and it's really interesting because you can already smell that thyme as soon as it gets kind of any heat to it. So we're just going to leave that. We're going to add in a little bit of our salt, and we're going to add in a little bit of white pepper. This is fine because I need heat. So you can see the tomatoes are starting to break down, the onions are going translucent. This is where we do need smell-o-vision. We do need smell, because it just smells so fragrant already, that little bit of white pepper. And I'm not even a massive fan of tomatoes. There, I've said it. And this is delicious. So, okay. So just while that's finishing, or just while that's cooking down, so that's going to take about 10 minutes, I'm going to start on my reduction. So I've got a couple of little shallots. Teeny tiny little things. If you can't get shallots, you can get the banana shallots, or they're called enchilon shallots, I believe, or banana shallots, or, how many times can I say shallots? If you can't get shallots, just use an onion. You could even use a red onion, just maybe a quarter of it. Honestly, you can just swap as to whatever you can get. So you want to peel these. They're very fiddly, these little guys. I mean, this makes for exciting viewing, doesn't it, me trying to peel a bloody shallot. So I'm just going to finally chop my shallot. I had some onion goggles I won at a drag bingo. I should be wearing them really, in all honesty. It's just so emotional. I'm going to turn this down. However, we do want some heat because we want to reduce it. So in this jug, I have got some white wine. I've got a nice Sauvignon Blanc. With wine and cooking, if you wouldn't drink it, probably don't put it in your cooking. I was going to say I'll drink anything, but that's a lie, because I'm a very, very elegant, classy lady. But yeah, this is a very nice Sauvignon Blanc that I've used, and a nice little white wine vinegar. So I'm going to add that into there. Okay, straight into the pan. The heat's on. Obviously no oil because it's liquid. And I've got a little bit of stock here. Vegetable, chicken. I wouldn't use fish stock, in all honesty. I think that might overpower, but I think a vegetable stock will be lovely. So I'm just adding that in. Checking on my concasse. Got all that beautiful like stickiness on the bottom. It doesn't look a lot, but there's so much flavour in that sauce, and you don't want to overpower Loup en Croute. You really don't want to overpower that, so I think this is why this sauce works really, really nicely. Into our stock white wine vinegar and white wine, I'm adding in my shallots. So by reducing it down, you're really concentrating the flavour. I've got some peppercorns. As I said, I couldn't find fresh chervil, if you can get it, chervil. So I'm just using dried. If you can't get it at all, you could pop in a little bit of parsley in there. It's entirely up to you. Okay, so I'm just using a little bit of dried. And then we've got some more tarragon. Remember what I said about not popping the stalks in? While that's reducing down, just give them a really rough chop. I'm now going to add a little bit of tomato puree to my tomato concasse, and you want to cook that out for another 5 minutes. That was really like, I don't know what or who I thought I was then when I went. I'm channeling Julia right now, that's what I'm doing. Oh, it smells lovely. You can see how quickly that will bubble and reduce down. And like I said, we're just concentrating the flavours by really, really reducing it. So I'm going to remove that, we can see that now. I'm going to remove that from the heat. Okay, so can you see how that's really reduced down? It's really, really concentrated. Just delicious. So I'm going to take that off the heat. I'm now going to add in my tomato concasse. You can really smell the tarragon, that slight acidic of the white wine vinegar. It's going to be beautiful. So I'm going to let that cool ever so slightly before I add in my cream, because I don't want to split it. So here is where a sabayon would be made. So the reduction would be used and would be added to the sabayon, which is like a foamy kind of hollandaise is the only way I can describe it. And then you would add the tomato to that, okay? But what I've done is I've reduced it, I've done my reduction with a little bit of stock, and then I've added my tomatoes, and I'm gonna add some cream, so just to simplify it. Oh, you know when it catches here, just that slight acidic kind of, there's a little bit of crunch from the shallots and the white pepper. You've got that wine in there and the sweetness of the tomatoes. And that little bit of tarragon. Oh, it's just delicious. Okay, so I'm gonna let that cool ever so slightly. Just to finish off my sauce Choron, I've added a tiny little bit of water to the tomato concasse and the reduction. So if you do over reduce it, just add a little bit of water to loosen it up. I'm now gonna add in my cream, okay? I'm gonna add that in and just give it a mix. Off the heat, we don't want it to split, and that's really, really important. Okay, once it's mixed through, look at that colour. I'm just going to put it back on a very, very gentle heat, just to heat it through. Oh, I'm so excited. Okay, moment of truth. Loup en Croute out the oven. Ooh la la la. Look at that, yes. Golden, crispy, everything's intact. We've got no leakages, no seepages. I have probe, I have tested that it is at temperature, and I cannot wait. I'm just going to, there we go, lovely. Just be careful with the heat. I do have asbestos fingers, and I'm just going to ever so gently move onto my plate. I think he looks quite happy, doesn't he? Just remember to remove your sticks of thyme. it just wants to warm it through. It's not soup, we don't need it boiling hot. And I'm just gonna add some of that beautiful, creamy version of a sauce Choron. Sorry, Mr. Fish, I'm so sorry here. I'm going straight down the middle. You can, that's a good sound. Okay, you can see. Oh, he looks a bit sad now, doesn't he? Okay, look at that beautiful fish. It's moist, such a good word. That mousseline is all cooked. The pastry is crisp. No soggy bottoms here. So if you were serving as a whole, you could probably whack at the table and everyone would go, ooh, ah, you're just amazing, sacre bleu. And you'd go, oh, oui, mon Dieu. Yeah, that's probably what I'd do. I went off on one then. I think it's a pretty good version, in all honesty. But this is my version of Julia Child and her, it's not my version of Julia Child, because Julia Child did not look like a fish wrapped in pastry. Sorry, Julia. This is my version of a Loup en Croute with a sauce Choron, hopefully simplified, made it accessible for you. As I said, we were lucky enough, and I was lucky enough to witness this being made at the Cordon Bleu. Having seen it on screen in season 2 of Julia making it, and understanding now why she loved this dish so much and wanted to replicate it. And yeah, just thank you for bringing this delicious dish into our lives, because yeah, I think it's wonderful, and I hope you give it a good go at home as well. I said this was probably feed 2 people. I think it would feed a lot more than 2 people, in all honesty. And actually, bearing in mind it was only 2 fillets of fish, goes quite a long way. Just want to spoon that over the top. I should have had some like micro herbs or garnish or something like that, but I mean, can only go so far. Can only be so fancy. Oh yes. Get some of that. Make sure you got it all. C'est super. C'est super.